You, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership, and so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me.
There are certain moments in politics when the setup is painfully obvious. A question is delivered with a grin, carefully crafted to put the other person on the defensive before they even open their mouth. That was exactly the situation when Donald Trump attempted to box Barack Obama into a corner during a nationally televised exchange. The goal was clear from the beginning. Pressure Obama into reacting emotionally, force him to explain himself, defend accusations, and chase a narrative that had already been shaped against him. But Obama had spent years navigating high-pressure rooms where one careless sentence could dominate headlines for an entire week. He saw the trap immediately, and instead of walking into it, he turned the pressure back around.
What you will about Mr. Trump, he certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we've got up there. Ted Cruz said that denying the existence of climate change made him like Galileo. Now, that's not really an apt comparison. Galileo believed the Earth revolves around...
Completely. Trump's approach followed a formula people had seen many times before. Paint Obama as weak, disconnected, and somehow responsible for problems that surfaced years after he had already left office. It was never truly about proving anything with evidence. The strategy relied on repetition. Mention the name often enough. Connect it to blame. Repeat the accusation confidently. And trust that the narrative becomes stronger than any factual explanation. That is how political traps are carefully constructed. These tactics are designed to shape the audience's first impression before the discussion even begins. But Obama did not respond like someone trapped under pressure. Instead, he paused, and that pause instantly changed the atmosphere.
The Koch brothers think they need to spend $1 billion to get folks to like one of these people. It's got to hurt their feelings a little bit. And look, I know I've raised a lot of money too, but in all fairness, my middle name is...
The room. It slowed the momentum, interrupted the rhythm of Trump's attack, and gave viewers a moment to think critically about what was actually being said. Then Obama made a calculated move. He did not simply deny the accusation. He shifted the entire framework of the conversation. Suddenly, the spotlight was no longer on him trying to defend himself. The attention moved directly back onto Trump. If leadership is supposed to reflect strength, then where is the consistency and steadiness? If success is measured by endless confidence and loud declarations, why does so much of that confidence eventually collapse into frustration and complaints? If America was promised renewal through sheer personality and force, why do the same problems continue returning without real solutions? That was the moment the pressure changed direction. Obama never shouted. He stayed composed, measured, and precise with every sentence. Rather than participating in a cycle of blame, he reminded the audience that leadership is judged by a different standard. It is not about who can throw accusations the loudest. It is about what you create, what you defend, and whether you accept responsibility when the attention is no longer favorable. Trump attempted to push Obama into defending the past, but Obama answered by forcing attention onto the present. The instant that shift happened, the entire balance in the room changed. The original attack only worked if Obama accepted the assumptions behind it. But he refused to play along. Instead, he challenged the assumptions themselves, and that is what made the exchange so powerful. Suddenly, the discussion was no longer revolving around Obama. The spotlight returned to Trump. Why does a leader who constantly speaks about strength spend so much time revisiting old grievances? Why does someone promising solutions continue circling back to blame? Why does a movement centered on winning remain so tied to unresolved conflicts? For many people watching, the contrast became impossible to ignore. Real authority does not always come with volume and spectacle. Sometimes it appears as patience. Sometimes as discipline. Sometimes it is simply the refusal to be pulled into someone else's performance. Once Obama changed the framing of the conversation, Trump was left in a difficult position. If he responded calmly, he had to engage with substance. If he reacted emotionally, he reinforced the criticism surrounding confrontation and spectacle. If he ignored the questions altogether, the audience could recognize the avoidance themselves. That is the strength of a carefully placed counter-question. It does not just answer an argument, it reshapes the entire conversation around a new standard. Obama's advantage in that moment came from restraint. He did not rely on insults or emotional outrage. Instead, he allowed the structure of Trump's own argument to reveal its weaknesses. The harder Trump pushed for dominance, the clearer it became that dominance itself was the strategy. Not clarity, not persuasion, not accountability, just control. And when politics becomes focused only on control, something valuable disappears. The ability to ask meaningful questions. What was truly accomplished? Who benefited from those decisions? What actually improved in people's lives? Who accepted responsibility when things went wrong? Obama redirected attention back toward those questions, which is why his response felt larger than a simple comeback. It felt like the entire discussion had been reset. Trump tried to keep Obama locked inside a narrative centered on the past. But Obama shifted the weight of the exchange by refusing to remain inside that frame. Instead of reacting on Trump's terms, he redirected attention toward the logic behind the accusation itself. That single decision changed the entire direction of the conversation. The setup depended on Obama behaving as though he owed a defense. But once he rejected that role, the foundation of the attack weakened almost instantly. As the exchange continued, the balance in the room kept shifting further. The focus no longer stayed on Obama's record or explanations. It moved toward Trump's behavior and the consistency of his message. Why does a leader who claims to represent strength constantly return to blame? Why does a promise of solutions repeatedly circle back to old battles? Why does a campaign built around victory rely so heavily on revisiting former enemies? None of those questions needed to be shouted because their structure already carried weight. And once those questions entered the conversation, the original attack could no longer survive without being examined from every angle.